Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening for a belated International Women's Day celebration. Today, I have three wonderful women with me to share their stories on this Women in STEM panel. And the theme that we're covering today is essentially what contributes to women's success in STEM careers. So I'm hoping that each of these wonderful women will share their stories with you, inspire you in some way. And please feel free to comment live if you have any questions or if you would like to dig deeper into something that these wonderful ladies have shared with you. If you would like to hear more, please do comment and let us know what you would like to hear. We'll go into more details there. So just to get started, I would like to invite each one of you to please introduce yourself.
Okay.
And
would you like me to start?
Yes, absolutely, Terry, please.
Hi, I'm Terry Judge, and I'm the COO of Dataraction, which is our host for this event today. I am by original training an engineer, although I've had a long career since then that has left engineering. And you asked for something personal, so I'll share that I met my husband in a brass quintet rehearsal because he plays trumpet and I play French horn. And he's out at a band rehearsal tonight, so he's not watching.
Well, maybe he can catch us offline.
That's true. We have replays
Yes.
that he can watch later.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you, Terry. Nicole?
I'll go next. Hi, I'm Nicole Duterte. Currently, I'm working as a senior specialist for Azure with Microsoft Canada. I have two wonderful children. One of them is already an adult,
Oh, wow.
taking his second year in University of Toronto, and my second is a wonderful girl in grade 7. My husband is actually a senior pastor of our local church here in Canada,
Wow.
in Toronto.
Wonderful.
And so, aside from being in IT sales, I do help a lot in our local church community.
That's great.
Yeah, and I believe my husband's watching today. Hi.
Nice.
So I'm Padmalata Raghunathan. I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for the last 8 years. I played different roles in Microsoft and different products too. I joined Microsoft from my undergraduation, so from university straight into Microsoft. That gave me into that early on set a different perspective on how to develop software technology from that aspects, and so that's where I started my career journey. And I met my husband when I was doing engineering. So
Wow.
yeah, we did our engineering, then we met, and here we are today.
8 years later.
Yeah. Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Gunjan Sial. I am the founder and transformation executive at Emerald Technology Group, Inc. So like many of these women, I started my career in technology at University of Toronto. I used to be one of those people that wanted to die writing code, hugging a computer. But I accidentally ended up at an Accenture info session, and that got me interested in being on the client side, learning more about requirements and creating technology through whether it's integration or custom solutions that solve particular problems that businesses have. So ever since then, it's been 14 years. I feel really old now. I've been in consulting. I've spent a fair bit of time with Accenture, companies like IBM. For the last 6 years, I've been founder of Emerald Technology Group, Inc., serving many companies in Toronto on their transformation needs, and that's how I met some of these wonderful women as well, through the network that we create as we, embark on our careers and our journeys. So maybe I'll get us started with some questions while our viewers are thinking of some of their own. So maybe if you could tell me what motivated each of you to pursue a career in STEM. What was that one moment or something that you remember earlier on that said, yes, this is what I want to do? So who would like to start?
I can go ahead. So earlier on, I feel that it was the role my parents played. First thing was to give a decision-making skill when I was a kid. So we like, to me and my brother, we never had any differences growing up. So that was a great booster as well.
Yeah.
And plus, like, my dad introduced me to a couple of new things. Like, for example, the book that he gifted me, How Things Work.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's like the basics of engineering, how machines work, how anything works, right? So that got me into that kind of like, hey, built me early on a curiosity into how do things happen, how do
So
things
it's
work.
great you mentioned that because it's that inquisitive nature, right? To start questioning
Yes.
how is this going to work and not just take anything as an assumption or as
Yeah.
granted.
And you can always like think of things in a different way. Why not something else?
Yes.
Okay. Well, not only why this,
Wonderful.
you tend to think of why not something else. Why wouldn't that work, right?
Mhm.
So it builds that kind of curiosity, and I think that was my foundations. And thanks to very good my math teachers, I would say, that's another thing. So
Yes.
mathematics is something that always been interested. Like I was always keen on math. And and the math teachers who actually taught me early on, they gave me a good foundations as to like how can you utilize mathematics in your daily life.
Mhm.
Like it'll be as simple as like paying your utility bills, but do you do that? Like what happens? Like, okay, why do you do budgeting and
Yes.
those kind of things? So those were my early on, I would say, inspirations, and then those inspired me. Okay, I think this is it for me.
That's
I'm
wonderful.
coming into sciences. Yeah.
That's great. So that was how old would you say you were in high school and university?
No, much younger. I was
Oh,
in
wow.
elementary.
Okay, so from
You
very
started
early
very
age.
early.
Yeah, so you I think those foundations are super
Mhm.
important to start early on. It gives you a curiosity, first build something in your mind.
That's true.
And it also gives you a lot of creativity as well. Like, hey, why not I do something like this? Why? And then you see people like, I grew up seeing people like Kalpana Chawla, like
Mhm.
going into space, like women going into space.
Yes,
and
she
those
was
many
the
things.
first astronaut, for those who don't know,
Yes.
from India, right?
Yeah, she was the first astronaut, women
From
astronaut.
NASA.
Yes, and she was working in NASA too.
Yes.
Unfortunately, she's no more.
She
with
passed
us.
away,
She
yeah.
passed away. Like the mission was
In the
not that
shuttle, yeah.
successful. But otherwise, that gave a lot of inspiration. And so when you are in a physics class, when your teacher talks about Madame Curie, and that's the only scientist you can see in the stages. And like, okay, yeah, like you see everyone. You have Edison, you have like Tesla, and all those folks. But then you see only woman there.
Yeah.
And then you are like interested. Okay, why only one person, right?
Mhm.
Like, why not someone else? So these are all the
I
things.
feel
that
like there's a
small
marketing
things.
problem there. I'm sure there's many more.
Oh, there's always a woman behind every man.
Yes.
That's also there.
Exactly, yeah. So how about you, Nicole?
Well,
you
my
mentioned-
background is quite interesting. So I believe among the four of us, I would have a very unique background because I did not really have a STEM education
Right.
background. So I graduated Bachelor of Science in Hotel and Restaurant Management.
Mhm.
And so everybody's now asking, like my friends on LinkedIn are saying, are you now a consultant, or why are you in IT all of a sudden? But this, like, they knew that was my background. And it's, I would say how I got here is through the power of networking.
Wonderful.
I would say that because it was my sister-in-law's friend who was in a telco company at that time. And it's one of the biggest telco companies now in the Philippines. They were just starting up at that time, and they were looking for new employees in the corporate sales team. And so that's how I got into the IT world. So I started with telco. I was
That's
more
great.
on the sales and marketing side of the business. And then when we migrated over to Canada,
Mhm.
I started to work again on the sales and marketing field within Hewlett Packard,
Oh, nice.
right? So I stayed a few years there, and then I moved on to Oracle. And again, that's again the power of networking, because it was my coworker who was invited to an open house
Mhm.
for a particular position. It was for a business development role. And she's like, "Oh, send a note to the recruiter and just show up with me." And I didn't know that I had to be a registered attendee in that event. And so I just came. I thought it was sort of like a job fair. I brought a few copies of my resume, and then when I entered the room, it's like, oh my gosh, they're checking attendance, and I'm not on the list, right? And I'm like,
I'm John Smith.
okay. So I came up to the recruiter. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that this was like by invitation. I apologize. So I can actually leave now. And she's like, no, you can stay. Let me finish the registration and we can speak. Do you have your resume? I said, yeah, I do. And so, long story short, we had that quick conversation, and she's like, you know what? Go and enter the room. And the rest of that was history. I was probably one of the few who got in before their hiring freeze. Wow. In that role, and I'm thankful for all of the companies that actually I've worked with, because I truly believe where I am today is a fruit of where I have been in the past, and I've seen the progression. And now, being with Microsoft, we are into technical skilling. And so even us on the sales roles, we are highly encouraged to actually know more about our products technically, so that we can actually speak to it when we're in front of our customers.
And there's so much information available out there.
It's amazing, especially in the cloud business today. There are new features and services that are coming up almost every single day or every month. There's so many changes, and learning really it never stops.
Yes,
right?
And that's the exciting part of it.
Exactly.
And Terry, how about yourself?
I feel like my story is a little, I don't know, more money motivated.
That's never a bad thing.
When I was growing up, my parents were teachers, and teachers were not paid very much, and we struggled a lot. And so my parents said to me, no matter what you do, make sure you pick a profession where they're going to pay you enough to live. And
good advice.
STEM jobs seemed to be one of the better paying jobs, and I loved math and science. And so it just was the natural way to go.
Right, that's amazing. And ever since then, you've had an interesting journey as well, right? I know you were at Harvard, you've done your time at Queen's.
Actually Stanford. And,
Stanford, wonderful.
Yeah, my husband and I kind of have used education as a stepping stone to make transitions in life. So between us, we have 7 master's degrees.
Oh my goodness.
And way too educated, but we've picked up different skills along the way that have allowed us to change as technology and society has changed.
Yes.
Started in the aerospace industry back when it was the mid-'80s when Ronald Reagan was in office, and there was all sorts of big mighty military stuff. And then came the later years where the spending was cut, and I thought, I better diversify my skill set, and that's how I wound up getting my MBA.
Wow.
And then later on, I discovered that I didn't know anything about analytics, and it turned out to be a great opportunity to come to Canada and learn about it. And
that's
so
amazing.
that was the final one last year. So people say that I'm kind of nuts, getting a master's degree at an age where most women are starting to think about retirement. But I would say that in STEM, keeping current and always wanting to learn is invaluable.
Absolutely, yes. And you know, there's different types of retirement strategies as well. There's yes, you can retire from the office, but you can be an investor, you can be a mentor for other people. There's so many different ways, and all of them, as you mentioned, do require you to keep up and learn what's happening in the market to be able to continue to contribute. Right?
Absolutely.
Yes. So my story is kind of a little bit different from you guys. I do have an older brother who's 5 years older than I am, and my dad is a chemist by trade. So obviously you don't see much chemistry sets and things like that at home when you're kids. It wasn't kind of the trend back then in India. But we were, in our neighborhood, one of the first people to get one of those bulky computers, the PCs, right? Yeah. The Windows, whatever it was back then, with those huge floppies. And my brother, I remember, still used to write code in Pascal. and it used to be these long floppies, and then came the short ones.
Yeah.
So I used to love dissecting them at that time, and then he would sometimes install these games. And I forget the name of the game, but there used to be this crocodile that would jump around and you would collect points, and it was like a fun little game. So that was my first interaction with technology in a true sense. And that really got me interested in, as you said earlier, how does this work?
Yeah.
What's behind this? And I really didn't know enough. So I started sometimes reading my brother's book, and when he wasn't looking, because they didn't make much sense to me back then, but it got me enough interested into it that started looking into it. I wouldn't say that I wanted to be in technology from day one. Actually, I wanted to be an astronaut, and I don't know where that came from. I just really loved the idea of math and science and space and calculating those weird angles that everybody hates to calculate.
Yep.
I'm
probably one of those who doesn't like the calculations.
I didn't mind them. And back then they had log tables, not calculators. You had to have really good eyesight.
Yeah.
You probably suffered through that.
Yes.
But it was just one thing led to another, and there was so much advancement in technology that just by watching my brother grow through that phase, it just really motivated me as well. So as soon as I got into a phase where I had a choice, I knew I wanted to go into sciences, and back home it's non-medical versus medical. That's the first choice you get. Do you want biology or do you want physics, chemistry, and computers? So I went with physics, chemistry, and computer because I'm one of those people that could not stand the sight of blood.
Same here.
It wasn't for me. So I decided this is the path for me, and since then it became more and more specific, and then it branched into more business, as I said earlier, with Accenture and some other conversations there as well. So I see some questions coming in actually. So Anthony just pointed out really interesting questions to us. How do you balance these social obligations versus career growth? I know of women who took a hiatus to bear and raise a child. And once she's back in the job market, it was so difficult to get back in. What would be your advice in such cases? A wonderful question.
Wow. I'll take a stab at it. Well, balance is actually, it's not easy. And I remember.
Especially when you're a mother.
Yeah, especially when you're a mother. So I am a mother, and I've been actively in my career even during the times when my children were much younger. I would say the support of family has played a huge role for me to be able to do the work that I do. So my husband has played a big role in supporting me in this job, as well as my mom, especially when the kids were much smaller and I had to travel a lot for work. So supportive family is number one, I would say. Number two is still not forgetting what your role is in the home.
Yes.
I think it's...
Which is the extra pressure, right, for women,
It
because
is.
there's certain expectation.
Yeah, it is.
And there's certain appearances, and then there's the job.
And there's the job, right? And so I think having the ability to actually integrate both worlds into your life is critical. Of course, having employers that also support us women, right? And understanding the kind of stresses that we also have and the extra load that we have in the home is critical. And so it's really about having that support system both in the home and in the workplace, and also still having that focus and priority over the family, because we don't want to be raising our children with absentee mothers, right? And so I think it's also knowing within ourselves what's really important to us, because we can sometimes go to the extreme, right? I mean, anybody can go to that extreme, but I think it's just finding your center and finding your balance, and knowing what's really important to you. I do understand some women do have sometimes need to take a break from work because of rearing the children, and I guess going back to the workplace again is, I think, keep your network intact when you have to take those years off the market, so that when you're ready, and also take the time to also continue to upskill yourself when you need to leave the job market, so that when you're back, you'll be ready at
Yes,
least.
it's wonderful you point that out. I know that there's so many different groups, even local groups out there that support women in this way. So I think the critical fact there is to figure out what is it that you want to do next.
Yep.
to do enough of that research on your own to make up your mind, because it's very easy to get distracted as well.
Mhm.
So figure out what is it that you're passionate about at the basic level.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of meetup groups. There's women in payments, women in business, women in tech. There's so many local groups with
Yep.
chapters. It's easy to find people on tools like LinkedIn these days.
Yep.
And I know that in past, sometimes I've reached out to a woman with a question or something that they could help me with.
Mhm.
I yet haven't been turned away, so I
Yeah.
continue to do that.
Mhm.
Even though I'm not in that position, somebody in that position who is willing to get out there and put herself out there, I'm sure that she would be able to get help that she needs.
Yep.
And I'm sure that if you wouldn't mind me saying this on your behalf, they could reach out to us as well.
Yes.
Yes,
For some
definitely.
pointers. Terry and Padma, anything to add to that?
I will just add on, with the kind of tools that we have, like technology tools that we have,
Mhm.
upskilling yourself, you don't have to spend a lot of time or you don't have to go elsewhere. You can
Mhm.
do it at home. It's fairly simple these days too,
Yes.
and you have a lot of content that's available over. So one thing definitely is like you can look out for opportunities later, but never stop upskilling yourself even during the break.
Yep.
It's super important. You can spend like 1 hour a day or
Yeah.
2 hours a day maximum. Read for yourself, and that's super important.
Or even little articles I find.
Yes.
Sometimes, I'll be honest, I don't read books anymore. I don't really have the time or the luxury. But I listen to a lot of podcasts if
Yes.
I'm in the subway or
Yeah.
whatever have you. Sometimes there are little TED Talks
Yes.
that are like 10, 15 minutes long, and you learn something from it.
Yeah.
Sometimes there are TechCrunch articles, could be anything really.
Yeah. So whatever inspires you,
Yes.
I think you should spend the time for yourself
Mhm.
reading
Make
at
some
least
time
an
for
hour.
yourself.
And that kind of makes you not feel like you don't have to start from scratch all over.
Mhm.
Like yes, you are taking a break, but that doesn't mean that you have to start
Yes.
like from scratch. This gives you an opportunity also to have a confidence in yourself. Like
Mhm.
hey, even though you have a break, but you actually spend some time on yourself. So
Yes.
um, actually, like it even works even if you don't take a break. Sometimes like people who are working and then who want to even switch on roles as well, this still works on for them too.
Absolutely.
Just spend 1 hour a day for yourself. So
Or
you
even
are
15 minutes. Start with smaller increments and then
Yeah.
increase
Yes,
it.
yeah, definitely. Yes, that will all work.
Absolutely.
Our company supports online education, and one of the things that we discovered in doing research is that there are a ton of free open courses.
I think
And
MOOCs is what they call them.
Yes.
massively,
Yes.
Open something.
open online courses.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
But they are actually woefully underutilized.
Mhm.
One is that people don't know about them,
Mhm.
and the other is that it's always a perception that it's for nerdy people. And the fact is, the ability to get education whenever, wherever, what time is just invaluable, and it's the biggest change that has occurred in my lifetime.
Wonderful.
So I think that the answer is very clear. Back when I started out, there weren't those
Mhm.
capabilities, and even our CEO Ann Fernie was part of one of the first online courses for analytics.
Wow.
So you can see the changes just within the last few years. So don't let the situation get in your way. Learn wherever you can.
Yes, and I will point out the other thing I've noticed on a lot of job descriptions, even for Microsoft, Amazon, Google, companies that people would think require a lot of education or a lot of experience from past. Not necessarily true, because a lot of the job descriptions actually say if you don't have formal degrees, but you have the skill, you have the passion, you have the right cultural fit, they would be considering candidates like that. So from that point of view, don't be afraid to apply to those positions when you see them, or reach out to people within your LinkedIn network or other social media that you're using to ask for their help. Now, I want to go back to a question that I saw earlier pop up online about what is the advice that you have for young girls who are interested in STEM? And I know this kind of goes back to Padmalata, your story a little bit as well.
Yeah.
Being the young girl and how your parents inspired you.
Yes.
So what advice would you, if fast track, I'm not gonna say it, plus X years.
She's
What-
still very young.
Petite women. Okay,
Yeah.
so what advice would you have for young women
Yeah,
in
but
STEM?
I would say that don't stop yourself if there are any stereotype roles that you get. And sometimes being nerdy or like looking at science may not be the coolest factor.
Although it is
or
pretty cool these
things.
days.
It is really cool.
AI
though.
is pretty cool right now.
Yeah, but come on, being
I
a
know.
teenager.
Teenager,
Yes.
social pressures.
Yeah,
peers.
so there is always a social pressure. I'm not gonna say like don't give in to the social
Mhm.
pressure and stuff like that. There is a social pressure, but it's okay. The more you have to do what you like to do.
Mhm.
You don't have to think about like what will someone think of it. How would I look about that?
Right.
So as long as you like it, just get it done. And
Yes.
there's no fear of like how you will look like if you want to get it done. And if you don't find people supportive of you in your group, find someone else who will be
Mhm.
supporting you.
And there are so many meetups even for younger women these days. Ladies Learning Code is a wonderful organization that I sometimes mentor with. So I would like to point that out. They have wonderful events and there are different age groups. If you don't feel comfortable going alone, request your parents or somebody that's an adult that who can take you there and you feel safe. There's also a robotics group. What we could probably do is share some links and some resources with these folks afterwards offline that would encourage them to explore those types of MOOCs and meetups and any books that you might find interesting, right?
Yeah, but books, right? Like you mentioned, nobody has time for books these days.
More articles.
But I would
Yes.
definitely go ahead with online education.
Yes, absolutely.
So you have the internet access. As long as you have internet access, you can learn about anything that you
Mhm.
want these days.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely the first point of
Mhm.
that one. And don't stop at being yourself.
Yes.
You don't have to be afraid of being like liking something. You
Mhm.
might be different, but that's okay, and that's actually great. You will be. So I wouldn't call that different. I call that the uniqueness factor.
Yes.
That's the cool
It's
factor that
interesting
you
you
bring
say
in.
that. I remember watching this episode of Modern Family at one point, and there's a character in it called Manny,
Yeah.
and he was having conversation with what's his name now, Mitchell, one of the other brothers
Yeah.
who's gay and is married now. So they were having a really cute conversation at one point in first season of the Modern Family, and they were basically the summary of that conversation was, well, I'm so much under the pressure at high school. What should I do because I'm so different? I don't fit in anywhere, and I want to fit in somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm forcing myself to do these things that I don't really like to do, but it makes me look cool.
Yeah.
So Mitchell's advice to him was, you know what, stuff that's making you different now is actually at some point what will make people come to you. So don't stop your uniqueness, your strength, your factor that you have, the wow factor.
Yeah, definitely. And always have a curious mind on how
Right.
things work. That's one thing. Just one thing to add on is technology is kind of a background of any industry these days. So you want to be in
It's
any
an
industry,
enabler.
you need to understand technology. It's like if you don't understand technology, I would say that's a basic skill these days. So at least learn how do computers work, like how to write some program, like small things. Like that's super important these
Yeah.
days. That will also be a basic skill for any women, younger.
Yes,
growing
but we're
up.
biased and
Yes,
you
yeah.
know,
Any person, but
I'm just
I
kidding,
would
but
say yes.
anything from your side, Terry, or?
I'd like to emphasize to those young girls and as they get older that for women in STEM, the choice of a supportive partner can make a huge difference in your long-term career. And it's not that it doesn't make a difference for anybody in any career, but women in STEM typically have a lot of opportunities for career growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so having a partner that understands that you have that drive
Right.
and is willing to be supportive of that is really important. They say that marriages are never 50-50. It's sometimes you give 80%, sometimes your partner gives 80%. And that's really the way it's been. I graduated, got married, and started my first job all within the same month.
Oh
my
my
goodness.
36 years ago. And so I wouldn't be where I am today without having a partner that understood that I really enjoyed
Right.
my work and I enjoyed doing well.
Mhm.
And sometimes we had to trade off opportunities. Sometimes things were better for me, sometimes they were better for him, but it having made that good decision
Yeah.
early on made a huge difference. So
Yeah.
even though it seems crazy when you're 16 years old to think about how is this person going to support my ambitions for the rest of my life, it's a huge difference. So think ahead.
Yeah. So would you say that that's mutual respect and cooperation? Is that the
Uh,
basis of it, or how would you describe? How would you know?
Certainly mutual respect, but it also, when you're talking about feeling different,
Yes.
you have to understand that different isn't bad.
Yes.
And so that you can't have a partner who's going to buy into you're not like everybody else's spouse.
Right.
And so it's a degree of compatibility that's beyond the, oh, I like you, you like me.
Right.
It's, will our long-term goals intertwine
Mhm.
and being able to think ahead and not just make those very short-term decisions.
That is true. Wonderful. So let's take another question from the audience. I see one that talks about how do you balance the social obligations versus the career growth? I know of women who took we already
We
covered
did,
this
yeah.
one.
That one, yes.
My apologies.
Yeah.
Did you encounter any social barriers when you enter the STEM field? How did you overcome those problems?
I wouldn't say social barriers. There are social stereotypes,
Right.
and we all go through that one as
I think
women.
it's cultural dependent, right? Sometimes they're seen as barriers.
Yes.
Sometimes they're seen as, well, you can choose to be this way, but if you don't.
Well, yeah, my parents will think that I'm rebel, so I wouldn't even go there. So this is what it is. There's nothing called as a barrier. That's what, as me as a personality, I would think. There are some gender stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
There are some social expectations.
Right.
I would say that, but nothing is a barrier. It's all in our mind. How we take it and how
Mhm.
we take it forward. As long as we have a good expectation set with everyone. Hey, this is who I am. This is what I love. I know you think of it differently, but I don't think that's something so different. We
Mhm.
can have an open conversation. It should not be anything that's bad.
Yeah.
But like I mentioned, there's nothing called as a barrier. It's all within us. It's all on how we overcome what we think in our
Mhm.
minds.
So you're saying don't choose
Yeah.
to look at it as a barrier, choose to look at it as an opportunity for improvement, or how do I develop skills to overcome this
Exactly.
seemingly barrier situation?
Yes,
Right.
sometimes you would want to you see someone on TV
Mhm.
or you see someone on you just see someone else and he'll do it differently, and then you're
Mhm.
inspired,
Right.
and now you have a curiosity on how do I get there, how do I do that, and you should not instead of thinking that way. If you think like, oh, my life is like this, I cannot achieve that one, I would stop thinking that, and I would recommend not to go in that
Mhm.
direction, but instead look at how can you achieve.
Right.
And like you mentioned, there are mentors available. There's a whole bunch of network. Even if you don't know people, talk to someone and they will introduce you to someone
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. We're
And
in
then-
hyper-connected society,
Yes.
so use it.
Yeah, and then and there are articles about literally everything.
Yes.
WikiHow, I think that'll also have an article on how to network people with people. But there's a lot of content available.
Yes.
I can
And
go
I
and
can
check it
definitely
out.
relate to that. Actually, I could speak to this from. I was about 15 or 16 when I first came to Canada with a single mother, and my older brother was actually still in India. So you can imagine a mother who had raised 2 kids. Yes, we had the extended family support in India, but we left all that behind with 3 of us here, and afterwards just 2 of us. So it was an interesting situation, but even as we were going through all that, and within second year of being in Canada, that's when I started my time at U of T, and it was so different from anything I'd seen before. So at first, you're right, it felt like I can't do this. I don't know what's going on. I don't understand what the expectations here are. But then just showing up even helped. Just show up, make a commitment to be somewhere, be at this class. If you don't know what's the expectation from this class, just go to the first one, you can drop it. So just being there and then starting to look at various problems that I could solve. So each assignment or each problem that they give to you, figure out how to solve this, talk to your peers, look at the books, go Google stuff. Be in the computer lab, somebody will come and talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's how, I think by the end of that first year, I started to be a bit more comfortable. And as my anxiety went down, my grades, I noticed, started to go up. So that gave me the motivation. And along with that, obviously, we live in Ontario where we have bursaries and some grants and loans available to us if that money happens to be a barrier. And there's many scholarships that a lot of companies have as well.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to reach out. Don't think, I don't think I'm going to get this. It doesn't hurt to take that first step,
Yes.
to go and ask just what could happen. Even if somebody says no, you tried, now you know better.
Yes.
Now you can try different type of options that may be a better fit for your needs, right?
I'd also like to add that probably there aren't really any social barriers in our time today in terms of, growing or being successful in STEM. In fact, a lot of companies, IT organizations today are encouraging more women, right, to be part of the IT or the STEM program in the industry. Because even my daughter was being encouraged by her teacher
Yeah.
to get into the STEM program in school. I think the biggest barrier would be ourselves. So I agree with what you said, Gunjan, that sometimes it's us having that anxiety, it's us actually not feeling so confident about ourselves that we can do it, that actually keeps us from taking that step that might actually open those doors of opportunities for you. And so I agree, having that supportive partner and spouse to help you pursue your dreams, or even just give you that idea that, hey, I think you can do this,
Yes.
right? Because like in
I
your
think
mind,
all
no,
it
no.
takes is one mentor
Yeah.
for somebody to tell you that.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And just go for it. There's a lot of opportunities for you guys out there, especially the younger generation. Just like
Yes.
what you said, that technology is available. Take advantage of it. You have opportunities and tools in front of you that were not available to us who have been in the older generation probably. But yeah, there's so much out there, and just believe in yourself that you can actually do it.
Yes.
And things will work its
Yeah.
way out.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, you can form your own support system. Like you have your support groups. There are a lot of people who think like us. Like they are. It's not like only in the world only us trying to do something. Only it's not only you. You don't have to take the whole thing on you.
Yes.
There are a lot of us.
Yeah, and I would like to point out, if by social barriers you're talking about just not being in a supportive environment, even at a younger age, there's wonderful organizations like, I used to be on the board for Sandgate Women's Shelter at one point, and I know that they were running a call center where you could call and get help. I will have to double check if that still exists, but there's also Yellow Brick House and many other organizations that are focused on supporting young women and young females who need support, whether it's, to get out of a bad situation that doesn't even Maslow's hierarchy, right? you need the basic food, need a warm bed to sleep in at night, and if those are the type of support that you need, there's many other organizations, and I'll be happy to share some resources afterwards that provide that kind of support. Terry, anything to add to?
I think you guys did a great job. We can move on to the next
Sounds
one.
good.
Yes.
So there's another question. What are some of the resources that you recommend for entry-level STEM learning? Are there any specific, I know we've talked a lot about, in general, there's so much on the web, but for entry-level STEM learning, are there specific websites or specific resources that you would point out?
I would say like start with resources like Coursera, edX, Udemy, Pluralsight. These ones, they actually tag all the courses for beginners.
Yes, and there are free courses as well.
Exactly. Most of them are free courses.
Yes.
Only if you want to get a certification, you need to pay for that. Otherwise, it's free. So they are already tagged for beginners.
Right.
And then you can get into like specific technologies, like hey, you're going into Azure or Google Cloud or AWS. So you can go into those specific ones too. And here as well, you have tags on beginner levels. So look out for the beginner level tags on any kind of area that you want to learn on, and then go for it. But there are no restrictions there in that.
And I think all it takes is time and
Yes.
internet.
Yes. Do some
And
little
internet.
research, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question about particular things. I would go back even further and say the best thing you can do for young kids is encourage the love of reading.
Right. Yes.
Because if you start with the love of reading, then everything seems to follow
That is true.
naturally after that. So, yes, STEM comes usually after reading, but if you start there, you'll never go wrong.
It's
Yes.
amazing you mentioned that. I had an aha moment just as you were talking. My mother was a librarian back home. She would bring home all kinds of books, and we did not have a TV or a cable at home. Like, you know what I'm talking about. In India, you need a special cable
Yes.
that brings you all those nice shows, which we did not have. So it was wonderful. During summer vacations, you get 2 months long summer vacations in India. So we would read anywhere from, Alibaba and 40 Thieves to Bible to anything that our mother would bring home. And you're absolutely right, because that's what gives you the drive to sit through those courses. Otherwise, you would get distracted so easily, would not be able to follow through.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, a couple other questions are coming in. What are some organizations or networking opportunities for women in STEM?
There are a lot of meetup groups
Yes.
in Toronto.
Are there any specific ones, Padma, that you will point out, or
I don't have something in mind.
what could they search with? What type of keywords would you recommend?
There are search for women in technology.
Yeah.
So if you're looking out for technology, yes. There are professional organizations for engineering. You can also look out for that. So
Actually, I saw an astrophysics club. I've been, I don't know enough about astrophysics, so I haven't had the guts to show up for one
you
of
can
their
still
meetups,
try
but
it out. Like
yes,
there's nothing
absolutely.
wrong in
Yeah.
any of us, even though we are in technology, like I mentioned. So
Yeah.
it's just a backbone, right?
Absolutely.
You can go into any industry. So I would start with professional engineer groups, like any engineering groups that you have. Like if in case of engineering, there are also great meetup groups for other areas too. So search for those areas.
Yes.
And meetup.com or meetup.ca is one first place I would go.
And you would say that normally those are safe gatherings.
Yes,
Yes.
they are all. And there are actually certain Facebook groups as well I've seen these days. And there are a lot of LinkedIn groups too.
Yes.
So you can go out for in those places where you can search for women in technology or women
Absolutely.
in that particular area role.
The other thing I would point out that we haven't said before, Eventbrite is another wonderful one.
Yes.
So the difference between a meetup and Eventbrite, I find, is meetup is usually, once you join a group, it's hosted by same group of people, and the network just continues to grow with that theme in mind. Whereas Eventbrite, if you give it certain tags, you get events in your inbox from various different sources, and then you can decide what type of events work better with your style and start going to those ones.
Yeah. That's
Uh,
fair.
Terry and Nicole, anything to add to that?
I know, just I believe the women in technology, and also on LinkedIn, right? You will see a lot of groups there
Yes.
wherein you can actually follow if it's an area of interest for you, right? Could be a specific technology, could be a specific group
Right.
that you'd like to develop yourself more on.
Yeah.
So just look at those types of groups that are available.
Yes, and Ladies Learning Code as well. They actually have a section on their website where you can suggest what type of learning skills or topics you would like to hear more about. And they're more than happy to work within their network to schedule those. Do any of you suffer from imposter syndrome? If so, how do you deal with it? That's a wonderful question. I love that question.
You want to take that, Terry?
It's
There's
taken, it's taken me a long time to really appreciate what I'm capable of.
Right.
When I've always done well at school, but I usually wasn't the very top of my class.
Something was holding you back.
And, well, I just never thought that that was me, to be the one who was at the top of my class.
Right.
And in terms of going back to school, I never would have applied to Stanford Business School on my own if my
Right.
husband hadn't looked at me and said, "Of course you can get in." I just never would have. So now here I am at this point in my career. I just graduated first in my class for the first
Congratulations.
time.
Wow.
So I guess I feel like, yeah, I probably could have been doing this all along if I
Right.
believed in myself a little more. But then I think, well, maybe I wouldn't have had quite so much fun and no regrets in life. So it
You
just
wouldn't
took,
be who you are.
right.
Yes.
It took me a little bit longer to learn
Yeah.
how much I was capable
Yeah.
of. And
You make a great point though. I think for women, I hear them say that a lot. It took me so long to realize this. It took me so long to understand this. And I think that's what we want to change, right? That women and men both can learn from that.
Yeah.
Challenge yourself. Don't get caught up in that learned helplessness sort of situation. If you're thinking, I don't know if that's for me, that's maybe your interest. But if you think I can't do this, well, maybe you can. Just try it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also important for us to keep your integrity as a person,
Right.
right? Knowing what your personal values are, regardless of what job or role that is put in front of you. I think
Right.
what's really important is what are your personal values, right? And also knowing what you're capable of.
Right.
But at the same time, do not limit yourself to what you can just do now, and open yourself up to learning more, right? And so having my background that's more on the sales and account management side of of IT, and now we're sort of, I'm gonna say the word encouraged to actually take technical certification courses. Was
Right.
like, oh, can I really do this, right?
Feels like such a big hurdle when you're thinking about it.
And I was stressed about it, but after actually doing it, trying it, and actually getting my badge of certification for doing it, it just makes you also feel so proud of yourself, right? That, yeah, I can do it.
And now you'll probably get many more badges.
I hope so too.
I'm sure Padma would like that.
Oh yeah, definitely. But
Wonderful.
to add on to that, I feel this is where the role of mentors is very important, and how you choose your mentors are also important. Sometimes you don't find in yourself what your capacity is, or you don't believe in yourself that capacity. Someone to inspire you, like example, your partner. Definitely yes. Choosing your partner is super important.
Yeah.
Someone who can make you take that extra leap of effort, right? Push you towards your whatever the light at the end that you're looking at. And that's first step. Second one is to have mentors. So you don't have to have mentors in your own area or different things. Right? Like you can have mentors in the areas that you can look forward into, or you can have mentors in a completely from a different background. to give you a different perspective.
Yes.
And so sometimes, like, I feel that, like, even though I have a capacity to do anything, but I will question myself, am I ready? Like, you know, can I do it? But that's where, like, any mentor would come in and say yes
Yeah.
or no. But that's how I choose mentors too. As in, like, I chose mentors who will tell me straight on my face, yes,
Yes,
you're
to be
good,
honest with you.
or otherwise you're shitty.
But
It's
also,
fine.
you can improve.
Yeah,
Just because you're shitty doesn't mean that's the end of it.
no, that's a good thing. Someone tells me
Yes.
I'm, like, you know, bad at something. That's kind of like giving me, like, okay, challenge accepted. I'm gonna be good at
Wonderful.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Um,
worst feedback you can ever get is just keep doing what you're doing.
Oh,
You're
yes.
doing great. Man, that's useless.
Yes.
Doesn't help you grow.
Not
No.
at all.
You have no idea
Yeah.
of what
Yes.
how you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So keeping it black and white, yes, I love it that
Yeah.
way. Just binaries. right?
Yes. In fact, I love what you said about mentors. When I first joined IBM after my MBA, it was a very different role from what I'd done in past with Accenture.
Yeah.
Because now I was working with people who were a lot more higher level up. The expectation was super high.
Yes.
It was partially sales, partially client satisfaction, partially delivery, all of it. So one of the things that I don't even remember how this came to my mind, maybe it just naturally happened for me. But one of the great things about IBM culture was to be able to go and have a conversation with anybody in the company and they would never turn you away. So I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna have a mentor who's really good at, like, find the person who's really good at business cases and just go spend time with that person. And then find someone who's really good at sales and just go spend time with that person. So I ended up with something like 5 mentors.
Yeah.
And I'd never done that before, but it was the most liberating time of my life because anytime I had a question, if I could categorize that in some shape or form and just go and find where that team within IBM is and go and ask them that question, rest assured, at least they'll point me in the right direction.
Yeah.
I agree, Gunjan, like, ask for
Yeah.
help, right?
Yes.
I don't think we're all expected to do everything on our own
Mhm.
Yeah.
and know everything. And so if you don't know how to answer the question, just be honest that, hey, let me get back to you, and ask for help from other people.
Mhm.
Yeah. And one more thing is the companies are not expecting you to be like, you know, excellent at what you're getting hired into. No, so they always, like, look out for somebody who can grow in the role
Yes.
as well. As in, like, okay, they
It is
don't
also their responsibility to help you continue to learn and grow.
Yes, and you
Yes.
don't always have to know everything when you want to appear for an interview. Like, you know some things, you bring in your own qualities, you bring in your own
Mhm.
values, and you bring in a different perspective to the table too.
Absolutely.
And so you don't have to know everything in order to get into a role.
Mhm.
Can I throw in a little different perspective?
Sure.
You don't always have to talk to people and meet people based on something that they can give you. You can actually learn from just about anybody.
That is true.
Yes.
Sometimes you learn good things, sometimes you learn things you should never do. But
Life learning.
if you're sincerely interested in talking with people, that kind of relationship develops that can become useful in ways you would never expect
That is true.
way forward in the future. And it comes from the sincerity, not from somebody saying, oh, I think
Yes.
you can help my career.
Right.
Mhm.
Don't
So-
always have a goal, be authentic and just go out there, meet people.
Yes, exactly. So, if you're not comfortable with going to somebody and saying, will you be my mentor, just
Mhm.
go and ask them the questions, talk, listen to them, and find out the wonderful things they share. If you enjoy talking with them, the relationship continues.
Yes.
And that's, I think, one of the neatest ways, and that's how I wound up in my position now.
That is wonderful. So I know we have about 5 minutes left, and I want to wrap up it because we've talked so much about what inspired you and trying to get yourself to put in the shoes of beginning your career and how it took the meandering journey that it did. What inspires you most now, and where do you think your industry is heading? So if you think about it from that perspective, what advice would you have for people that are listening today, no matter whether they're starting or whether they're well into their careers? If you think about from that point of view, what advice would you give them?
If I could pick any piece of advice, it would be that technology is always going to be changing.
Right.
So you're going to have to keep learning. Don't look at it as something like, I learned this and I'm done. And you will always build on the past things you've learned,
Right.
and it will help you in the future's things. So go ahead and take the wild trips of learning and
Yes.
things you never expected, and you'll find beautiful things growing from it.
That is amazing. Thank you.
I would add to continue to build relationships.
Yes.
Continue to build your network. We do have a saying that you never burn bridges. The IT industry is very small. A lot of people are connected to one another. So continue to build your network internally within your own organization, and build your network outside of the organization. I mean, that's how I actually got invited to this panel, right, through my connections to you, Gunjan, and so thank you for this opportunity. It's been really awesome. And so, build that network, because that network will actually help you and support you in your success.
May not do it today, may not do it tomorrow.
May not be today, but
term.
in the longer term. And at the same time, think about what you can also give back.
Yes.
Right? Think about how you can also help others in their journey to their success.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, so speaking about technology and where do we go from here, like I mentioned earlier on, so technology is becoming the backbone of any industry. There's no guesses as to where it will go 2 years from now. It's actually long-term planning if it's 2 years in technology, right?
That is true.
Yeah, short-term planning would be like half hour maybe.
Yeah.
But like Terry mentioned, you have to keep investing in yourself.
Yes.
Learn continuously. You
And
might
don't
be
be afraid of change, right?
No way.
Yes.
Yeah. So you might be expert at something today. Tomorrow there'll be a new thing coming up, but it's okay. But your knowledge from what you learned today, it's definitely going to be useful into learning something new tomorrow. Because
Absolutely.
you bring in that perspective from hey, I have this experience from this. Okay, now how do I do this X? You saying that different concepts that I know of earlier on. Or how would this technology cater to a different industry which I'm part of? You're switching industries, so something like that. So my advice is technology is always going to change.
Yes.
And keep investing in yourself.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
I would say, just to add to that, know your strength as well. So in past, I used to put my strength into a particular technology or a particular problem. At one point it was retail industry, at another point it was supply chain or something or the other. And I found that to be there was a pit in my stomach that said, that's too pigeonholy. There's gotta be something more about me that makes me great at this.
Yeah.
So I tried all the different types of problems, and for various reasons there was a trend. And the trend essentially was, if it's a problem that hasn't been solved before, that's what really interested me, and it has to be something that involves both business and technology sides. So I found that that's the making of an interesting enough problem for me that helps me wake up in the morning, helps me get out of the bed and find a way to learn and solve this problem.
Yes.
And you cannot ever solve a problem on your own, so you have to partner up with technology experts, with sales experts, with operations experts, and many other people, right? So how do you make that happen then?
Yeah.
So now we do have a really interesting question, and we only just have a couple minutes, so I would ask you to keep this one a bit short if you don't mind. What do you think is the next big trend in technology that these people are preparing for?
I think we saw in 90s growing up there were no devices. I think we were in a transition generation. We were just starting to get used to devices.
Yeah.
Now you have too many devices. Maybe we will look at some place where you don't have devices. It's looking at only ourselves and how do we get connected to the network, right?
You're sounding like a Black Mirror episode now.
Not too bad.
No.
Not too
You
bad.
never know how it ends though.
You never know, Isaac. You never know what things are going to change then.
What do you think of the whole ethical AI and robotics and RPA?
Yes, speaking of that one, so
Mhm.
when you want to design anything in technology, you need to always think of how it is going to impact the end
Yes.
customer. Okay, sometimes
And
it's
the
going
society.
to, yes, of course.
Community, yes.
Sometimes it's going to take someone's job. Then you need to be prepared, and they need to guide that person. Okay, yeah, we cannot learn this one, so that you do it your role in a different way. So it's not like you like lose something
Mhm.
or you do it differently.
Right.
So you need to be thinking from the community perspective as well. And then you need to think of like, hey, let's say you're developing some apps and that's not really good in
Mhm.
terms of affecting the psychology of like young kids or someone.
Yeah. So,
So-
by comparison, those hacking apps.
Yeah. Or anything. Or you need to be okay. You also need to think of something how responsible you are
Mhm.
when you deliver something to the customer, also to the end user. That's our society.
Yes,
right?
and I would say that this is the change in trend in my mind, right? In past, you've developed technologies, like even if you go back to Einstein's time of atomic bomb, it was always kind of an afterthought. Now people are learning to ask that question first. Is this something that would help people? Is this something that would drive positive change or negative change?
Yes.
And how that gets spent. So I don't know how many people are reading about everything that's happening with Facebook and so many different companies. They're at the cusp of this. It could go either really well or really poorly.
Yeah.
So what would drive that?
No, it all depends on us as society how we also shape those companies, right?
Right.
Like how do you want to share your data? When asked any form, like trying to sign up for something website or some app, don't just blindly click on everything. Read through
Think
things.
about it, yes.
Terry,
It's
it's
important.
important.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, the thing that I think might catch us by surprise is the implications of quantum computing.
Yes.
Because even though you're saying that we think about things first,
That is true.
I think quantum computing is going to change security, it's going to change our approach to problem
Yep.
solving.
Yes.
If this turns into the field that it has the potential to be,
Yes.
our lives could be so different 10 years
It's
from
another
now,
atomic
we
bomb, isn't
can't
it?
even imagine it. And it's important for us to be thinking about now
Yes.
how to make it be a force for good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think I probably just to tie everything, technology is technology, but actually how we're also going to use it, how it will affect our business processes,
Right.
how it's going to affect our culture
And our
the-
lives.
and our lives and
Yes.
people who will actually be managing it. I think the biggest thing that will also need to change, and for us to be also responsible along the way.
That is wonderful. And I'm sure that we could all keep going and continue to have this very, very interesting discussion. But I would like to thank you all so much for coming here and sharing not only your career paths and the work that you do with us, but even parts of your personal life with us. Because that's what really humanizes us. And these days it's all about bringing your whole self to the work. Because it's a family at work, it's a family at home. And you need to be yourself at both places. So thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you too.
If there are any questions that our viewers still have, which we haven't addressed, please feel free to include them in your comments, and either offline or through maybe a follow-up session, wink wink. We would love to get you that information. We would also combine any resources that we've talked about today. I'll combine that into a list and share that with our viewers. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for Anne, Fernie, and Terry for Data Action to host us today. And we look forward to seeing you again at our other events. Have a good night, everyone, and very happy International Women's Month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.